Good evening. This is the Ava Community Energy Community Advisory Committee meeting for Monday, January 13, 2025 at 6 p.m., approximately 6:22. We do have quorum. We're here in Oakland, California. I'll give it to the clerk for roll call.
Yes. Thank you. Member Landry.
Present.
Member Weiner. Member Balkison. Member Stevenson.
Present.
Member Swaminathan.
Present.
Member Lakshman.
Yeah, present.
Member Pacheco. Member Carr. Member Harper.
Present.
Thank you. Member Lopes.
Present.
Vice Chair Souza.
Present.
Chair Hernandez.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We'll move to item 2, public comment. This item is reserved for persons wishing to address the committee on any Ava Community Energy related matters that are not otherwise on this meeting agenda. Public comments on matters listed on the agenda shall be heard at the time the matter is called. As with all public comments, members of the public who wish to address the committee are customarily limited to 3 minutes per speaker and must complete an electronic speaker slip. The committee chair may increase or decrease the time allotted to each speaker. Do we have speakers online or in the room?
Yes, we do.
We'll take in the room.
Yes. Jessica Tovar, recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. Jessica Guadalupe Tovar with the Local Clean Energy Alliance. First and foremost, I'm from East Los Angeles, so that's where I was for the holidays. I just came back from LA, and I just really want to emphasize that when we're advocating for resilience, we're trying to actually prevent what's currently happening right now in Los Angeles. And just wanted to uplift that a lot of the investments of this agency is really to build the resilience of our communities, because at the end of the day, we don't know what's next, but we will have grid failures. We will have power outages. We will have more wildfires. We will have flooding. And we need to be able to have that islandable energy that we've been advocating for throughout our communities, you know, in a decentralized way, so that when we can't depend on the grid and the grid goes down, we're at least able to have our communications, you know, for emergency services, but also with our families. And I just went through a whole power outage. I could see the homes in Altadena burn, and the next day found out that many of my friends had lost their childhood homes. I'm very thankful that they're alive. Certainly, you know, lives are more valuable than possessions and buildings, but at the end of the day, that's shelter. We need that, and there's a lot of people without homes right now, without anything but what they walked out of their home with. So I just want to bring it up again, because as someone who's been working on climate for 21 years now, exactly what's happening right now is what we were advocating for. People thought we were crazy. I really feel that, you know, now is the time to take action. It's well overdue. Clean power to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. PHM, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Hey, hi. Sorry, I'm here because I was talking to one of your customer support last week. I'm just curious, does anybody from the committee has ever looked at the PG&E bill which comes to us?
My apologies. You're asking about if anybody here is here regarding PG&E bills to talk to you about?
Yes, yes. If the PG&E bill was generated, it needs a 5-page of document on how to read and interpret that bill, then someone definitely need to look at it. Because 3 years back, I have raised a complaint for $2 mismatch in my account. I connected with your EBC at that time, East Bay Community Service. They said they don't know, PG&E should look into it. I contacted PG&E, they said they don't know, EBC. I connected both the representatives together. Still, they could not answer why there is a mismatch in the bill is happening. Now, suddenly last month, I got one message from our community that I need to do some change because my billing cycle is changing or something, all along I was under the impression that 2.5 years back I took a decision that I want to go full out on the PG&E. Then why EVAC community is coming in between? Because I don't want my bill to be so complicated that I need a PhD person to even understand the bill and compute the bill.
Thank you. I think I understand you saying that the bill is complicated, and to quote you, that you don't want to have a PhD to understand it. Without having more information about you and not making it publicly known, we can't really discuss more your account, at least from this perspective at this board meeting. You would have to reach out to the Ava Community Service Energy line to get further assistance. Without expressing more information, it's hard for us to be of service here this evening, but understand we would like to simplify the electric bill for your service. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there no other hands raised at this time?
All right, thank you very much. With that, we'll go to item number 3, approval minutes from December 16, 2024. And there, I think there is one small correction in regards to my chair report. There we spoke about the extending this mud contract with the focus on local services. I think more the focus was making the call center locally placed in the territory. I think that was more of the comment that I was making there during that chair report. It was last year. I think that was the intent of that comment. I think I was lifting Cynthia's member Landry's concern about that still being in Sacramento, whereas we can bring jobs more locally into the Ava service territory. So I think that would be the only adjustment I see. I'll look to the committee for any other adjustments to the minutes. All right, without any other adjustments, I'll take a motion with the adjustment.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion for the adjustments
And the approval of the minutes
and for the approval of the minutes.
with the adjustment correction. Thank you.
And I second.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? And now we'll take a roll call vote.
Thank you very much. Member Landry,
Yes.
Member Stevenson,
Yes.
Member Swaminathan,
Yes.
Member Lockton,
Yes.
Member Harper,
Yes.
Member Lewis,
Yes.
Vice Chair Souza,
Yes.
Chair Hernandez.
Yes.
And my apologies, one more, Member Balkasoon.
Yes.
The minutes are approved.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to the chair report. There we have an item that I'll briefly touch on, but last month, December 18, 2024, I sent over the information, and you might have received it or not this afternoon, but the consent agenda minutes were approved, as well as the contracts entered in the Peterman Pool ESA amendment. The work plan update that was worked on by Alex in this committee was also approved and updated, and I believe Ava is also participating in this agricultural hourly flex pricing pilot to hopefully make energy costs more affordable in that area. CEO Chang spoke about the Habitat for Humanity partnership, supporting Sequoia Grove project in Hayward, a fully electric, affordable housing community. And then unincorporated staff with King County will be making Ava an 18-member organization in early 2025. And I think the minutes there for the board of directors say 2024, so I might want to just make that correction.
Okay, thank you.
In the chair report, I did share information about the formation of the ad hoc committees, and the Emerald Cities Collective Grant was approved unanimously, which involves multiple community-based organizations to ensure equity and then local impact, with a shortened timeline of 18 months to accelerate progress and gather more information towards future grants, and they're talking about the resilient hubs. The local development plan was reviewed that evening, highlighting those accomplishments by Annie Henderson over 2018, 2023, outlining the priorities for the next 6 to 12 months as well. The plan had created a roadmap with 70 tactical recommendations, driven achievements such as renewable energy projects, municipal fleet electrification, resilient hubs to extend, and community-focused programs like affordability grants and workforce development. The presentation that Annie gave emphasized the agency progress in balancing ambitious goals with operational feasibility while adapting to evolving community needs and lessons learned. So there, I think we will be talking more through the committees about how we go 2.0. I think staff is also looking on that roadmap of the next iteration of the local development business plan. And I just found out the Scott Harry Wind Project has a panel about the former board of directors who were there, and I didn't know my name was on that thing, so that's pretty cool, so, from being a previous board member there. The presentation that Annie gave discussed there was discussion ensued by the board of directors, having reach codes and making sure we can reach towards better codes, a conversation about customer financing, some incentives, clarification on the AMP program, which I wasn't sure what the AMP program was. I need clarity on that. Plans to expand the disadvantaged community green tariff program was also emphasized during the call. The importance of publicizing AVA's accomplishments and the more conversation on equity and program design. The initiation of a strategic planning process was brought up to evaluate how we went from the startup phase to really evolving AVA more, and then really pushing forward that annual business plan or annual report to local policymakers to effectively communicate AVA's progress and initiatives to stakeholders and policymakers. And then we had 3 board members that left or were outgoing at a minimum, Cal, Patino, and Jorgens, as well as member Cox. We're no longer part of the AVA board. There's a lot of information there. The meeting was good. The presentation Annie gave also highlighted the last 5 years, some good dialogue and ways to really move forward this organization. Questions? I know there's a lot out there. Comments from the report from that so far? Cynthia?
I would like to suggest that next year that when we review the local development business plan, I would like to see it come to the CAC in addition to it going to the board for community input.
And then I think to clarify, I think the board got a snapshot of what's happened in the past, and I think they're going to discuss what's coming forward, and then we'll also have the opportunity to review that. And I think our effort with the ad hoc might bring it together. I think working with staff, we'll be able to meld it hopefully and bring recommendations based on the ad hoc committee and to what they're visioning through staff, what's next to do as well. So I hear you that we want to make sure we have our input here at the committee level with the local development business plan. Good, perfect. And I think one other item that's being discussed at the board meeting on Wednesday is this AVA bike and electric safety voucher adjustment. I think there is concern about the safety helmets or other safety equipment not being enough money for that program. So they're going to increase it from $100 to $250 for local participants. So that way there's more monies for like helmets for not only for the rider, but also for the child if they use the cargo electric bike connection. There'll be more money there for helmets. So it was only $100 before, and I think that's going to increase to $250, and there's a $2 million budget for that item. So I should increase the budget, but they're just going to allocate more money towards safety equipment from $100 to $250. I think that's really all I have on the chair report. Interesting stuff. Yes. No.
Yes, I appreciated that there was also, Ayla Peters-Paz had mentioned that we were looking at the resiliency hubs, and I don't want to forget that as far as maybe even an ad hoc for that, so just bring that out there and remind us of that.
Yeah, we'll be discussing more of the ad hoc committee update, and there we have space to get the 2 updates from the chairs and other discussion if we want to work towards a 3rd ad hoc committee. And I think we're looking forward to seeing some presentations or workshops by Emerald Cities Collective with the organization in the back too. So we'll see how that goes. That's it for item C5. We'll work through chair and vice chair elections. We can take that item now as an action item, and then carry forward the rest of the evening. Any nominations for chair? Member Landry?
Yes, I would like to propose or nominate Mr. Hernandez as chair again, along with Nikki. And yeah, I think both of you have done a spectacular job. And
Can I second that?
you, Mayor.
I would like to second that.
Member
I'll third for Ed.
Now third for
I'm so
members.
glad to have him.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm stumbling my words today a little bit. Apologies. Any other nominations? We have a motion and a second on the floor. All right, we'll do a roll call vote.
Great, thank you. Member Landry,
Yes.
Member Balkasin,
Yes.
Member Stevenson,
Yes.
Member Swaminathan.
Yes.
Swaminathan,
Yes.
Member Lockman,
Yes.
Member Harper,
Yes, and thank you both for your leadership.
thank you. Member Lutz,
Yes, and I repeat, Member Harper's thank you to both of you.
Did-
Vice Chair Souza,
Yes.
Chair Hernandez.
Yes,
Passes unanimously.
thank you very much. And thank you for the vote of confidence for a second year. Thank you. All right, so now we'll move forward to the next item, which is allocating funds to AVA's Building Efficiency Accelerator Program. It is a board consent item, shifting unused local development funds to AVA's Building Efficiency Accelerator Program. I think JP's here for that item, or no?
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Lopez with the Local Development Group. I feel like I've met a couple of you already, so hello again. But I oversee our commercial energy efficiency program. So I will be talking about that today, as well as providing an update on the funding for this program. Unlike many of the programs that you probably know about through AVA, this program is not funded by our revenue. It's funded through CPUC ratepayer dollars. So it's something to keep in mind. All right, so what do I mean when I say it's funded by external dollars? I'll provide some background. So CCAs and IOUs and RENs have the ability to access ratepayer dollars from the CPUC to administer energy efficiency programs. The funds for this come from a bucket called the Public Purpose Program, PPP bucket. It is a little surcharge on all of our utility bills that pays into this large state mandated program. And this bucket funds things like energy efficiency initiatives. And so in 2021, EBCE at the time applied to get access to some of these funds from the PPP to administer our own program. And in September of 2022, the CPUC approved through a resolution for AVA to administer a commercial energy efficiency program with a budget of $13.4 million over 3 years. And then in May of 2023, AVA launched our program called the Building Efficiency Accelerator in partnership with our program implementer, Cascade Energy. And this program goes until May of 2026. And just a brief note on how this program works. What we do is we target our large commercial industrial customers within our service territory. We enroll them into our program. So example, like this building would be an example of a building that we would enroll. We provide them with a holistic site assessment of their entire facility. We present them with a list of energy savings measures that they can implement to start saving energy. We provide them with technical assistance. And so not only are the customers saving energy on their bill by implementing these measures, we also pay them incentives, pretty generous incentives for how much energy they save, and we measure that at their meter. That's a little bit about how the program works. We're about 1.5 years in. And to date, we've enrolled about 30 buildings, again, belonging to our largest C&I customers. We have hospitals enrolled, biotech companies, a data center, universities. So there's a wide variety of different customers that we have enrolled. And with these customers, we've identified around 15 gigawatt hours of potential savings from energy efficiency projects. So we can go to the next slide. So recently, in August of 2024, Peninsula Clean Energy notified AVA of an error in our budget calculation. So again, as I mentioned, we were approved $13.4 million. There was an error in the way that we calculated that initial budget. And so this miscalculation was identified across all CCAs that applied in the way that we did. So it was about, I think 7 in total CCAs had an error in their budget calculations. Even though all of these budgets were approved through resolution by the CPUC. So to break down the error, without getting too into the weeds, essentially, as I mentioned, all of these programs are funded through the PPP all of these programs are funded by the collections from the PPP charge on all of the utility bills. The PPP, the Public Purpose Program, funds energy efficiency initiatives, but it also funds a variety of other programs throughout the state. So this includes low-income programs, this includes some wildfire mitigation initiatives, this includes care, so not just energy efficiency. So when we were calculating our budget, we took the total collections from the PPP, that total collection amount, versus just the percentage that belonged to the energy efficiency line item within the PPP amount. I know it gets kind of hairy. Essentially, we just should have used a percentage of the PPP instead of the whole thing. So this led to an over allocation of funds in all of these CCA budgets. And so AVA should have only received $5.5 million instead of $13.4 million if we had used the correct calculation. Next slide. So what does this mean for AVA? So once we were notified of this issue, all of the CCAs got together and proactively went to the CPUC to flag this issue and to discuss how we could address this in our current budget and also going forward. And on December 24th of this past month, the CPUC issued a draft resolution proposing a corrected budget for AVA and for all of the other CCAs. The AVA corrected budget is $5.56 million. And so if the resolution is approved, we would need to return the funds that have, we would need to return about $7.9 million worth of funds that had been provided to us. So our new budget would be $5.56 million. While all of this was happening, right? So we recognized the error in August. The decision didn't come out until December. We had stopped all enrollment in this program just to minimize risk, right? And in looking at the total program maximum spend that we have with our 30 enrolled customers, we have projected that our total program forecasted spend would be about $6.5 million. This is inclusive of administration fees as well as incentives. And so that leaves about a $1 million funding gap, right? Just subtracting the two. And we've already spent $1 million to date. So we can go to the next slide. So our recommendation is that we shift $1 million of unused funds from the local development building electrification budget into this building efficiency accelerator program to make us whole, to make the new budget $6.5 million for this program. And the rationale behind this is that AVA has identified around $4 million of unspent funding from previously allocated local development budgets. And JP and Annie will come to the board at some point in the near future to discuss this a bit more. So we have the $1 million of unspent funds shifting is the proposal here. And this is important because we really want to maintain positive program experience with the customers that we have enrolled. These customers have given really good feedback about this program, right? It's all about energy savings. And so that's really important. The customers have valued this, and ensuring that we have the total budget available will just ensure a seamless, positive program experience. And again, this is one of the first touch points that AVA has with a lot of these commercial customers. So again, it's a really important program for our brand as well. And again, just circling back to the whole, to all of the services that this program offers. Again, this funding will support the implementation of energy efficiency measures. These include things like equipment replacements, control optimization, electrification projects, and the whole goal is to help customers reduce their energy usage and achieve around 10% of energy savings on their bills, which for a commercial customer is pretty significant. So that is our recommendation. Again, this item is going on consent to the board on Wednesday.
Thanks, Allison. I think just one thing I would add around the rationale to do this right now is also that there's a limited window for enrollment of these customers because the program has a term. And so we want to make sure we have sufficient budget to not only serve these customers, but also if any of these projects of existing customers fall out, to be able to kind of backfill them and continue to provide these services to our customers with this budget that's been allocated.
So I have a question about, so these are the non-bypassable charges, right? So if they are, so those are considering things like wildfires and a whole list of other things. And isn't PG&E the one in charge of that? Or
Correct.
So how can then we?
Right, and that's part of the issue with why the calculation was a bit nebulous for CCAs. We would have to work with PG&E to get.
That's the next step from this.
Right.
Okay.
Well, the draft resolution actually proposed what the new calculation would be, but going forward, if we were to reapply, we would need to work with PG&E to understand what those collections were associated with the energy efficiency component.
But as a CCA, we have the right to apply for some of these funds that PG&E is collecting in order to administer CCA administered energy efficiency program. So that's something that, you know, through our remit from the Public Utilities Commission, we have the right to do that.
And I wholeheartedly support energy efficiency, so nothing negative there. But I'm just curious, things like wildfires, which are very much, so that would that take, it would reduce the amount of money that goes in those other areas too, right? So we're doing a trade-off.
So I think actually wildfire is a separate line item on.
It's not part of the non.
Bill, I think that there's a. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a separate line item, and then there's also something about wildfire. I don't think it's there's two different line items.
Right, there's the
But
wildfire.
these dollars, to Allison's point, should only come from the energy efficiency portion of the
Right.
public purpose charge. So this is moving dollars that would have been collected and administered by PG&E or BayREN and allowing AVA to run programs for our customers. But the energy efficiency bucket is, as a percentage, is fixed.
Thank you. Member Harper has his hand up, and then we'll go in the room.
Hi, thanks. I think I support this because you want to maintain a relationship with these customers, like if they're in the middle of a program and you want to have consistency, not leave people hanging. It would be good to know a little bit more about, I guess, what the 1 million is being diverted from, and just generally why there are 4 million in unspent funds in the building electrification budget. That was just something that I was curious about, and roughly why this was the one versus any other potential options. But again, generally totally understand, and sorry for what has probably been a really crazy situation to deal with. Sounds like a lot of potential for confusion and explaining things.
Yeah, I'll take the budget question. So we have, by and large, we've discussed with this body before, we have our building electrification, energy efficiency, transportation electrification, resilience, and grants. Those are kind of the main budgetary areas within the local development team. And so the building electrification and the energy efficiency budgets are really in the built environment around buildings. And so we hadn't previously been allocating much funding to energy efficiency because those funds were coming from the Public Utilities Commission funded activities. And so we hadn't allocated local development funds specifically for energy efficiency because all this has been paid for by the PUC. So as we looked at the budgets and identified that this really was for the built environment and looked at the building electrification budget, there has been some unspent funds within the building electrification budget that we identified for use for this program. And as Allison mentioned, part of the local development business review that we did is also to bring forward to the board, as we've discussed, kind of a look forward. And part of that is where's all the funding been allocated within the local development efforts, what's been spent, what's not been spent. There have been programs or things that we have not executed on. And so there are some additional funds available that kind of are unallocated. So it was really kind of focusing on the built environment as a space that the board has wanted to invest in, and identifying that that's where this budget would most reasonably come from to fund this shortfall.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
So that's my bailiwick is energy efficiency. I've been in these programs, BayREN, Tech Clean, many other, even large-scale efficiency buildings and projects such as Genentech and UC Davis. It's very easy to hit 10%. I can tell you right now, adjusting ACs and the economizers on the roofs should be the highest priority in any building. If you haven't gotten an economizer, or if you haven't checked your economizer, boy, you have a really big opportunity to improve your building efficiency, lower your bill. So of course, that this is very important that we satisfy our commitments to these larger buildings, commercial buildings. And so I would totally support making this right with what, this particular resolution is. But in the future, I would like to really focus on what is happening when a building is undergoing an improvement, and how are we going to qualify it, by 10% improvements. Again, adding switches, optical switches, looking at lighting. These are very easy things to do. And I love the fact that we're talking about energy efficiency. 40% improvements in energy efficiency of a building, especially a large building, is attainable. And so I really would like to say that, some of our ad hocs will be looking at energy efficiency and how to implement that. BayREN is no longer around. I think that their energy efficiency programs is being eclipsed by the Tech Clean and Golden State. I'm looking at getting a rebate from hopefully a program of $11,500 for my water heating and heating. And so the electrification has lots and lots of money right now. So that we're taking it from the electrification, as far as I'm concerned, technically that's a very smart move. There's a lot of dollars out there for that right now, and incentives. Managing it, on the other hand, is another thing, and how well that's done is very important. And doing a lot of QC and checking on these particular improvements, that they are actually done, and that they are, pay for performance may be something to look at, and see how well that these improvements have done. So I'm just saying that a lot of efficiency in buildings, there's a lot to think about, and I'm happy to talk about that at any point in time. And again, you know, this is great stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go back to Member Harper has his hand raised. I'm not sure if I let him continue or not. Were your comments completed, Member Harper? Sorry.
Thanks. Yeah, one quick, more kind of general follow-up. I was just curious if is this the only current program that Ava's administering that's coming from public purpose funds? And if not, I was just wondering if there are any efforts looking at expanding into that pool of funding, statewide funding.
I will say, yes, this is the only program that Ava is currently running with CPUC ratepayer dollars, and maybe I'll let JP speak to the future outlook on that.
Sure. Yeah, there are other grants, you know, state grants, local grants that we're getting in the transportation electrification space, but this is the only CPUC funded program. And we're certainly evaluating, you know, future opportunities as we look forward on, you know, what programs we're running and where we're getting that funding from. And we'll bring that back to this body as we make decisions there or get insights or feedback.
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna go to Member Lutz, and then I'll come back to you.
You say the CPUC approved this, and then when the CCAs pointed out the error, the CPUC clawed back the money they gave that they had already approved. And they didn't acknowledge any lack of oversight on their part. They clawed back the entire amount, not just like, okay, it was a mistake, you guys made a mistake, we made a mistake, we'll split it with you, or something like that. Was there any pushback by the CCAs to say, hey, we brought this mistake to you, we don't feel like we have to pay for the entire thing because you guys didn't catch it either?
Good point, yes. We didn't push back on them. We really just presented the error to them and tried to talk pretty openly about how to resolve the issue. They didn't communicate too much with us directly. We really just had to wait for them to issue some type of formal, you know, draft resolution or whatnot. I also will say that the energy efficiency in California is, you know, the funding for it is really under a microscope. And so I think it's a pretty sensitive time for these types of programs, just given the high customer bills in the first place. So I think any opportunity the CPC could have to, you know, claw back any unused funds, I think they were going to take advantage of that.
But there wasn't any
Pushback?
at all from the CCAs or discussion of it at
No.
all?
No.
I want to express my disappointment
We
with that. I
we
mean,
don't
I
have, I'm
understand-
sorry, we don't have authority in that to withhold funds. So
I understand that we don't have the authority. I just am disappointed. I'm disappointed that none of the CCAs said, I mean, the CCAs brought it.
Right.
You guys brought it to the PUC, and the PUC didn't even say thank you or anything like that. They just said, give us back all the money that they'd already given out.
Right. Yeah, I think one of the,
Disappointed that there wasn't attempt to,
Right.
you know, do some negotiating or bargaining or something.
right.
Okay, so that's my first comment. Second comment is, I don't like taking money from the local development fund. That's why, a big reason of why David was originally started to do local development. So I'm disappointed at that. I don't see any other way around it. I don't know what other funds, there might be other funds, marketing, you know, whatever, but I don't see any way around that. but again, want to express my disappointment that those funds are coming from local development. I mean, to me, it seems like they have to come from someplace, and local development was using them, so I'm just disappointed with that. And the other thing is more of a process. This is an item that's on the consent agenda for the board. And I don't know I don't know quite how to say this, but it seems sort of disrespectful of the CAC that we're asked to discuss something that's on the consent agenda. I don't know that this should have been on the consent agenda for the board, but, and it's obviously sort of a last minute thing, so I don't see a way it could have gotten onto our agenda last month. So again, I don't like it, I'm disappointed, I don't see what else you can do. But, you know, asking us to comment on something that's in the consent agenda for the board, you know, what if we say absolutely no, and then the board says, or, you know, we make a motion to say, and I'm not saying that'll happen in this case, but as a CAC, if we vote to that the board should disagree with the staff suggestion, and the board, it's on the consent agenda, and that just goes through, they never know that.
Jim, just to clarify, anything that's on consent can be pulled, so I can ask the board chair to pull the item for discussion because we have comments on it.
Okay.
And then we can discuss
then
the
I'll-
comments that we made here and the recommendations for, or against it, or any alternatives. So whatever we discuss that might be in consent, we can pull from that item and ask them to, I can report out the item, so at least pulling the item from consent for discussion, and everything else gets approved on consent, like contracts entered, and this gets pulled for discussion and comment, and any other board dialogue, that it just gets moved along, but I try to highlight whatever the board's, the CAC's wish is.
I would also note, we took this to XCOM earlier this month and had an active discussion about it and got feedback from the executive committee of the board that they were supportive of this. So this isn't going through without any discussion with the board. That was on purpose so that we could get that dialogue and feedback, you know, from the executive committee. Of course, we can pull any item and have that discussion at the board meeting. That's any board member's prerogative, of course. But I did want to highlight that we have had discussion about this with the board for that purpose.
Perfect, thank you. Member Nadi, you had a comment?
Yes. I wanted to ask, if I may, what is the total unused funds in the local development pot? And then do we typically carry those funds over?
Yeah, those funds are carried over on an annualized basis if they're unspent, and so that's part of why there's existing funds left in the building electrification is from, you know, from multiple years. So that's, we'll be bringing that analysis forward for discussion to the board in the next couple of months and give everybody a full view of that across all programs. For the building electrification budget, there's $4 million currently that's unallocated.
But it's typically rolled over in succeeding years.
That's correct. The local development budget early on was set up in a different way from other budgets, a little bit, you know, because we knew that programs take a while to get running and to implement,
Right.
and so you wouldn't necessarily be able to spend all dollars in a fiscal year that were allocated in that fiscal year.
And I have another question. Was there, I'm not saying I'm not for this, but was there consideration to shift 1 million from another existing pot, like maybe reserves or anything? I'm just, can you?
Yeah, these are local development programs, and we've got a local development budget. So we didn't consider taking from marketing or the human resources budget or the power resources budget. It was within the full local development budget that was where we were looking to pull funds from.
Right, I guess what I'm really asking is possibly reserves or something.
Again, we looked at the local development budget as the budget to pull from.
Okay, thank you.
Member Susan, Vice Chair, sorry, oh, yes, go ahead.
Okay, all right. So, since we have 30 customers, out of that, there are some biotech and potentially tech companies as well. Can we prioritize those? And I know we also need to look at the PR for AVA. Is there any possibility to scale down the support for biotech companies rather than supporting all 30?
For biotech companies?
To minimize the impact and pulling the money, extra money, $1 million from the local development fund.
Oh, you mean, so to prioritize some customers versus, I think we want to continue to prioritize all of the customers that have engaged with our program. They've signed an enrollment agreement where we've presented all of the services that we could offer and the incentives available. And so we want to sort of keep true to that agreement that we had initially signed. We had thought about prioritization if we hadn't been awarded if we had only received $3 million, we probably would have had to do some prioritization, but because we have almost the entire budget that meets the maximum spend, I think we're gonna prioritize everyone equally.
Thank you. Vice Chair, you had another comment?
I'm kind of curious, what would have happened if all the CACs said nothing to the PUC? Would have just that kind of, would it have affected the other programs, the CARE program, the LIHEAPS, and did we apply for those, or what would have happened?
I think if we didn't flag this issue, I think it would go unnoticed. So that's one issue. And then secondly, if we were to reapply for funding, we would have some discrepancies in the calculations when we reapplied. So it would have, the issue would have been an issue regardless.
That makes sense. And then I'm curious, are we going to continue to apply? Are these dollars still in the forecast for us?
Right. I think that we're at a point right now where we're evaluating whether or not we will continue to apply for ratepayer CPUC dollars or lean more on our revenue for these types of programs. So that's something that we'll be making a decision on in the coming weeks, months. So
I would love to see that. And lastly, electrification is energy efficiency, moving away from gas and moving into heat pump situations, or even in an electric situation where you have electric resistance types heating, and I'm sure it's out there to move into electrification. Those dollars can be considered as energy efficiency and vice versa.
Right. Yeah, we have a pretty generous electrification incentive as well through this program. So that's exciting.
That was a key point when we first applied for these funds, was that we wanted the flexibility to try to push electrification along with energy efficiency. So that was core to the proposal that we submitted to the Public Utilities Commission.
I have a question, and this may not, well, when I was going through my bill because of our ad hoc of energy affordability. I was noticing that when you look at the NBC, just all these different charges that are attached to renewable energy and electricity. But then when I look at the gas charges on my PG&E bill, there's nothing associated. There's no, is it just we don't see it? Because I don't see anything like public purpose programs, or there's nothing attached to our gas bill. So is that just because we're AVA and we don't see it? But on my PG&E bill, I just see, so it almost seems like we're taxing our electrification with all these different programs. And it seems to me the gas companies should have the same programs. Because, I mean, it's not on the bill. You just see gas, $5, you know, whatever, $10. So I'm just wondering, is that something that we're just not seeing because we're renewables, or?
So is the PPP really attached to the AVA community energy sector? It's just PG&E, and PG&E has always had a PPP fund. And I don't believe it's.
But out of electricity, though. It's not like when you look at the bill.
I don't think it's specific to electricity from what I understand. I think it's just.
It's charged to the electricity.
What Indira is saying is it's charged to electricity. There is no PPP charge to your gas consumption.
Well, we receive as
Look at your bill.
our
No,
utility.
this is my bill here. I mean, because I was doing this for what Katie sent us and just trying to figure this out. So it's like, I 100% agree that we need these charges, but it just seems that we are getting an extra tax for doing renewable energy, which gas people are not getting. They're almost, I mean, I don't want to say they're being subsidized, but it appears that if I look at my bill, it'll just say gas. That's it.
I believe there are gas non-bypassable charges. I can follow up with you on on how those are, if those are displayed on the bill or not.
Yeah, they're not.
I know that we had to be very specific that in the calculation that we were just looking at the electric PPP non-bypassable charge. I do believe that there is a gas non-bypassable charge as well, because there are gas programs throughout California. But I can follow up with
That'd be
you on,
great.
yeah.
Because my
what that
kind
is.
of follow-on of that is, let's reallocate some of those funds for energy efficiency. I mean,
That's not an area where AVA has any purview, just to be clear.
right, no, we're just trying to understand, you know, the energy affordability aspect, and maybe it's something that our lobbyists or something need to talk. I mean, it just seems like, I'd like to know that the fossil fuel industry is doing some public good as well, you know, so. We hope so.
There's no more further comments. We'll go to public comment if there is any.
Jessica Tovar, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
I will say that energy efficiency is important before we do electrification, but I see your point, Mickey, that it's certainly part of it. I do worry about what is being sacrificed to have another program. I am curious about where folks who are in the energy efficiency program live. Is that, you know, the entire territory? You know, are they renters and homeowners, or is this just homeowners? You know, I have a lot of questions, but one thing I want to say is, in similar to what you said, Jim, the CCAs have a huge network, a lot of power, and a lot of money. And to not see them advocate to those, you know, larger agencies, I think is something that really, that personally bothers me, because we did a lot of work, you know, at the CPUC to really defend the CCA's autonomy. And it was very, I don't know, it just, to see not very many board members or CCAs represented to stand up for their own, like, programs and ratepayers, you know, us customers, I think is, yeah, it's an issue overall. But I do see a lot of money that's been allocated in general to different pots of things that don't happen or don't take off for whatever reason. So that in general is also a concern, so. But I do see the value in this energy efficiency program, you know, as we are trying to really offer the benefit of all the different steps that come under clean energy. Thank you.
Thank you.
And there are no further hands raised.
Thank you. Just a quick comment from my perspective. Just to understand the $4 million that was in that budget that was not being utilized, but was there programming that we were going to use in the future, or just wasn't focused? I heard that was unspent monies. So what was the program, or any program where we want to leverage CPUC funds first before you use our funds? So what was the vision of that carryover not being utilized? Is it just more about ramping up with staff, or just other challenges that you may have seen?
Yeah, I think, there's been a variety of things that we had looked to do that we're unable to do because of bandwidth or priorities changing. And so the energy efficiency budget that we had established was always assumed to be coming from the Public Utilities Commission. So when that shortfall emerged, then, we were looking at, again, budgets within the build space that, hadn't been fully spent. So that's where those dollars came from.
And do you see for the future, even though if the board does approve the allocation of the $1 million, leaving that bucket with $3 million, do you still see using those $3 million for the additional commercial customers, or some other place for the roadmap?
No, I think that's the ongoing discussion, with the board around what should we do with those funds? So we have this $1 million that we're asking to be reallocated. That will create, now we will have a set budget that we can go and execute against our promises to our customers for this commercial energy efficiency program. And then the reallocation of those additional funds, that's going to be something that we bring back for discussion.
So when would it be appropriate for this advisory committee to speak to the $3 million or whatever else?
Well, when we'll be presenting materials to come and bring to CAC and the board for discussion.
So thereafter, we'll have more opportunities for more additional feedback.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and thank you. And I know we have quite a bit of money in reserves, but was that brought up in the general reserves so we could hold this budget whole, these $4 million? Or just something like we don't want to touch reserves because we need them for the sake of the agency? Was there any discussion about the reserves comment? Like is it $500 million in reserves? I know we want to keep that money there for operations, but is there any appetite, or was it brought up by the ExCom committee to discuss the $1 million reserves and using it, or it just was like, oh no, we have $4 million, we're using $1 million, moving on? Just curious, basically.
Yeah, we didn't propose internally or to ExCom about using other dollars other than the local development budget. We feel like, the reserves are for reserves, and other program or other functional areas are for those budget areas. So this is local development, it's our customer programs. And so that was the budget to be looking for this $1 million from.
And if the scenario was that we had spent, more than $4 million, would you have then recommended using the building vacation $4 million and then tap into reserves? What would have been sort of the scenario you think there? Would that point then drive you to use reserves, or would you want to take them somewhere else? Just hypothetically, just wondering.
Yeah, we didn't get into the scenario planning on what if we needed 10 times or 5 times or 4. We knew what we needed to spend in order to make good on our promises to our customers. That was a finite amount. So that then kicked off a process of evaluation.
And the final thought, I heard that you were in the position to push back or say, no, we want to hold on to the $13 million, whatever allocation it was by mistake. Was it something that the board needed to empower staff to do, or that dialogue? Can you help me understand how that works? Like AVA staff didn't ask, we want our whole $13 million. If there's an error, this is what should be given. But would you have to have gone through the empowerment process to say, yes, we should fight back? Say, it's your mistake. We have a resolution saying this is what we get. We should still get this. But there was a concern about the future. Maybe we will get less. Was there any kind of analysis around what are our rights, or what should we be doing? What can we do? I think I heard that we can't do more. This is what it is. Just to the feedback of a member in a public comment. How does that sort of evolve? Like the next mistake, if any, of course. How do we sort of keep ourselves up being clawed back because of a resolution said we get this much, we got that much, we should have that much. It's a mistake, but the resolution says you get $13 million. Maybe in the future years you can adjust, but just to understand mechanically how that would work, where we could have pushed back or can push back if there's any future concerns with PG&E and CPUC.
Yeah, there was definitely evaluation with Todd, our Director of Public Policy, who spent many years at the Public Utilities Commission to assess what our rights were, and you pick your battles. You know, so if you have zero chance of having any right to retain those funds, then going and, you know, making legal arguments and spending legal time to write dockets and try to fight for dollars that you have zero chance of retaining didn't seem like a worthwhile time and expense on our part, especially if we think about the opportunity that we may want to apply for future funds to the PUC for running additional energy efficiency programs. If you throw a bunch of stones, then maybe the next time you don't have opportunity to run more programs. So it's a political and calculated assessment. How hard are you going to fight on something you got zero chance of winning?
Thank you for clarifying, providing the insight to the process and the dialogue. It's helpful for the conversation here. Thank you, JP. Thank you very much. What's the will of this body? Oh, we'll take 5 minutes after we take the vote. Oh, is that okay? Will we want to move this forward? Any positions, first, second, as staff recommends, or I can provide commentary or consent to with our concerns if we want to, but I'll let you, Vice Chair, want to make a motion or some sort?
Well, I propose that the Community Advisory Committee has looked at this, and in respect to just the 1 million pulled from the other funds, specifically the electrification funds, I'd like to propose that we push this forward and agree that this would be to the next step on that.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Member Harper seconds. Other dialogue?
I would like you to present some of the discussion and commentary that we had here to the board.
And to summarize some of the conversation, commentary, asking questions about the reserve and the lack of pushback.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's a really awful situation you guys got in. And I totally sympathize with that. I don't know that there's anything better to do, but I'm really disappointed that money is potentially going to have to come out of local development funds. Yeah, you heard all of these comments, so, you know, I don't know what else you can do, but it's just.
Any other comments?
Maybe suggest that prioritization within the customer list and see if we can minimize the impact.
But my understanding was this is not going to impact any of the money that's already been spent or any of the promises, contracts that have already been made. It's just to cover the existing ones, we're going to have to do the 1 million.
Yeah.
And then we'll stop all of them going forward.
If I understand correctly, it is already stopped, meaning they are not enrolling any more new customers. And what I am thinking, if possible, if the contractual agreement still allows us to stop some of the customers going forward or moving forward with the program and reduce the impact, and instead of the impact currently is 1 million, if we can reduce it to, I don't know, whatever, 500 million, 500K, if that is possible. That's one option to look for.
So I think I'm hearing you say there's any way to mitigate the $1 million overspend where possible if they prioritize. But I think when I heard that it's already just to fulfill the commitment that people said on the agreements, this is the gap. And to cut back or claw back some of the spend, would that maybe be possible? Is that right, or am I incorrect?
So the $6.5 million is based off of the 30 customers that we have enrolled in the program. The incentives that they could see from all of the energy efficiency programs that they pursued, plus the administration fees that go into that, would equal $6.5 million. And so that is what the budget, we want to ensure that we have the whole budget available so that every single customer, if they want to pursue every project that they have on their list, that they can pursue it. So it's really just based off of the existing customers that we have enrolled.
Just to clarify, Mr. Lutz, I don't think they have spent the entire $6.5 million, correct me if I'm wrong?
I think they
So,
have a budget
yeah,
for 6.5.
Right. So, again, my point here is rather than allocating entire 1 million, is there any way to, if we can support the local programs with 1 million, and if we can minimize this impact, if possible.
I think part of the rationale for doing this was, for requesting this funding, was that we've made, we have a set of expectations we've set with customers, all 30 of those customers, and we want to be able to have the budget to make good on those, and that, we didn't recommend, nor did we get any kind of pushback from the board around putting some of those customers above others, or, deprioritizing or reprioritizing. It's, we set some expectations. We want to be able to meet all those expectations with all those customers. So of course, this advisory committee can make whatever recommendations you want, but that kind of brand and public relations and customer expectation management was paramount in our minds. And so that's why we have not kind of said, oh, we're going to put these 5 customers at the top and these 5 customers at the bottom. So that was our rationale there.
Okay.
Thank you. And I think one last thing, I think there was a comment about maybe where they're at, these 30 customers. It would be good to know where they might be in our service territory, who's taking advantage of this, just for informational purposes. Be good to have some visibility to that. I don't know if that'd be done by Wednesday, but maybe in the future, a conversation, when we do more updates about the work we're doing, might be valuable just to have visibility in that space. I think that addresses the concern from public comment. Would there be anything else?
No, I think the situation has been very well articulated. I just, so I'm going to support the motion. I just think that, well, I'm protective of the local development funds also, but I think that we should look, possibly at reserves or something. We have healthy reserves. If we find ourselves in a deficit, whether it's this issue or another issue, I don't think we just, and I'm not saying you did this automatically, but I'm just saying, we look at other ways of funding it, finding the shortfall, perhaps through reserves. That's all. But I'm supportive.
Thank you. And I have members omitted on Zoom.
Yeah. Hi, I would like to support Member Souza's motion to look for funds elsewhere. And is that particularly the reserves that we're talking about? Is that common to, when there's a program shortfall, is it common to tap into the reserves? Is that common practice?
I think the motion on the table to take staff recommendation to pull the $1 million from the building electrification local development budget. I think there is dialogue about bringing it up to reserves, something in dialogue from the motion. So if the motion on the table is to take, yes, staff recommends from that $4 million budget to offset that $1 million. If you want to make a substitute motion or some other
Yes.
motion.
Yes.
Okay. What is your motion?
No, I support the motion by Member Souza.
All right, thank you. But you want to make sure there's commentary regarding other opportunities maybe to pull from the reserves in the future, or to have that dialogue brought forth in the Board of Directors meeting?
No, I'm just wanting from staff a clarification whether accessing funds from the reserve mid-year through, is it a common practice?
That is, so it's not common. In fact, this is an uncommon practice of, coming and moving funds from one to another, from these extenuating circumstances. No, it's not something that we've done before. And yeah, we haven't, and we also haven't gone and requested funds from reserves for anything.
But perhaps because this is a one of a kind, it's unusual, maybe it's the appropriate to, this is an opportunity to pull from the reserve. Unusual circumstances require unusual actions, I presume. So I support the motion on the table.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other comments or questions, we'll take a roll call vote.
Great, thank you. Member Landry?
Yes.
Member Buxton? Oh, they stepped out. Member Stevenson?
Yes.
Member Swaminathan?
Yes.
Member Lakshman?
Yes.
Member Harper?
Can I clarify, we're voting on Member Souza's motion?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Thank you. Member Lutz?
Yes.
Vice Chair Souza?
Yes.
Chair Hernandez?
Yes.
I now wait for Member Bakassoon, but otherwise the motion is affirmed.
Thank you. Member Swaminathan, you have your hand raised again?
No, I'll lower it. Sorry.
We're gonna take a quick 5-minute break. I think our dinner is here. We'll come back in about 5 minutes and we'll hand it over to the next item C7. So Annie, you'll be on deck. Thank you.
Just to click the keys.
Thank you for your patience as we reconvene item C7. Ideally here, we would have a local development business plan review. There's more information though. This was something that Ms. Henderson brought forth in detail, but do we want to just go over a quick overview and then we can have any discussion about what's been done? And I'll give it over to Annie. Is that okay?
Sure. I can maybe just walk through quickly. I know we do have a number of newer CAC members, but perhaps they already looked at the materials. But I'll try and do high level and then save as much time as possible for any follow-up discussion. Adrian, could you pull up that presentation? And while you're doing that, I'll just say, good evening, everyone. I'm Annie Henderson. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Ava Community Energy. And we'll go over the local development business plan review, which was presented to the board in December 2024. So that's what we're looking at tonight. We just go to the next slide, Adrian. Thanks. One more. So this is just to lay out for the board and now for you, sort of a very high level timeline. So we're going to look through the efforts from 2018 to 2023, as well as a high level review of what we're working on right now and really going forward, because many of the programs that we are working on and close to launching will continue for a number of years. The board did not request any additional follow-up presentation, though we did talk about, having strategic road mapping plans developed and shared with the board. And then at future board meetings, excuse me, we will be doing this local development fund overview, which we kind of touched on here in discussing about unallocated budget. So just a quick high level review, as JP already said, it was decided early on in the existence of the agency that the money specifically for what we call local development, which is largely our customer programs or things that have directly impact our customers, that those funds did not sort of expire, like use it or lose it, but in fact rolled over year. And so there are areas where maybe it was a pilot that we decided not to continue forward with, or other instances where the money was not spent. And so we will provide sort of a review about what the budget was, what the spend was, what is remaining, and our recommendations for how to reallocate that. If we could go forward, please. One more. Okay, so quick background, as many of you in the room participated in the development of the local development business plan, but some are new. So LDBP is what we refer to it as. And, it really existed before, its inception started before we really had many or any staff at the agency. So it's facilitated by staff of Alameda County and a steering committee, which consisted of local elected officials, some of their staff members, environmental activists, labor representatives, members of the community. And that started in June 2015. The agency actually formed in 2017. And then we started serving commercial customers in June of 2018, and then in the fall for residential. And then we expanded to Tracy, Pleasanton, and Newark in 2021 and rebranded as Ava Community Energy, of course, in 2023. And so it was really the origin story of the LDBP was that it was something suggested by the steering committee, and it was meant to be sort of a roadmap of efforts. And it was very broad. It is very broad. So I will note in another slide, there was about 70 different tactical recommendations. So it was both super broad, but also very specific and tactical. And this was for an agency that at the time didn't have any staff. We weren't serving customers yet. So it was, quite audacious, I think is the word, because it really looked to maximize the potential of a CCA model. So we tried to achieve as much of it as we could. and then had to prioritize some items as well. So if we could go to the next, please. I think the next one is, yeah, just goals and priorities for EBCE, which of course was our name at the time, and then the overarching goals and objectives. I'm not going to read through those, but you can see it covered quite a bit. It also covered, you know, I think we often think of JP's team, the local development team, as sort of doing all the work under the LDVP, but really it covered a lot of points. So our technology, our account services, definitely some of our procurement, and then a lot of our customer programs, which fall under what we call our local development team, but it was quite expansive. If you go to the next slide, please. I'm sorry, I'm a little hoarse here tonight. So this I just wanted to show for those not familiar, it is a pretty lengthy document. It was broken up into 3 sections, and what I will focus on in sort of my summary is a lot of the early action areas, because these are sort of our programmatic areas, but then I'll pull out 1 or 2 things from the second section specific to energy storage and VPPs. But you can see that it, sort of the breadth of topics that were covered by the document, and there's sort of a further breakdown of the table of contents later on in the deck that was presented to the board as an appendix. Can we go to the next one, please? And so, as I mentioned, I did sort of an indexing by going through the document and trying to pull out recommendations, which were highlighted. So there were 70, there were basically 18 categories, from demand response to net energy metering to a risk management strategy to rate design. And I think what we found is that over the last several years, we've sort of categorized some of these recommendations in a slightly different way. And so to sort of better have them align with the work that has been done over time, I sort of rearranged this presentation into these focus areas. So sometimes they align directly with LDVP, sometimes it's sort of like I consolidated things. So demand response, energy efficiency, building electrification, transportation electrification, collaborative procurement and affordability, community grants, workforce development, and then virtual power plants, energy storage, and then there's kind of some others that I just wanted to call out because they had been mentioned, given some significant attention within the plan, and so wanted to call out some of the work we did on them. If we go to the next slide, please. Actually, and then you'll go one more. So this is a bit of an eye chart for those of you that are looking at it in the front of the room there. Probably easier to read the printout, but wanting to highlight the things that were either sort of initiated and development was started, some of which are now coming to the point of like a public launch. Some things that, so you can see the color code up there is what is complete with lessons learned, meaning we kind of pivoted away from that effort or used it to inform the next thing. What is ongoing and what is under development. And so I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna read all those off. Happy to take questions. And this represents, I think it's about like 38 different efforts. When I looked specifically at the index, it's actually, we're more like 45 of the 70 recommendations we have addressed through various efforts. Could we go to the next slide, please? There were some recommendations that we sort of consciously, actually very much consciously decided not to pursue. So under building electrification, there was a recommendation that we could consider providing a natural gas service at a premium and then use those revenues to support essentially electrification or fuel switching. We were not in a position to do that as an agency that was just starting to serve our customers under the sort of standard services offered by community trace aggregators and the load serving entities. Under collaborative procurement, there were some like community net energy metering, which is sort of a form of virtual net metering. That was something, the billing operations were too complex for us to implement at that time, and there's sort of limited applications of that. Feed-in tariffs did not prove to be financially feasible. Certain NEM adders, such as like those on prevailing wage, we just didn't have the data that would be necessary in order to implement that type of program. Develop a stable of pre-qualified vendors for energy efficiency. I think, you know, we're sort of moving towards that type of effort now with our work on healthy communities. But in that case, you know, we're working and sort of sussing out the contractors on behalf of customers, but, you know, that is not something that we were in a position to do within the first 5 years of starting service. There were a couple customer financing programs that we did not pursue. Again, mainly, you know, priorities and the needs of customers. I mean, those, especially the first one, PACE financing, that was still available to customers. We just didn't engage in it directly as Ava Community Energy. And then there was one around improving and clarifying zoning and the use rules for larger systems on county land. So, you know, we are certainly looking to work with projects that are within our service territory. In fact, there's one out in Livermore that we do have an RA contract for that actually had quite a bit of difficulty with zoning and sort of some public process that it had to go through, but that was not an area where we were going to sort of advocate and take a very active role in changing zoning to support large generation systems. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? So this is the slide that summarizes some of the work we're doing going forward. I would say this is an oversimplified view given the amount of work and the underlying efforts for each of these initiatives. So again, I won't necessarily read through all of them, but you can see we've consolidated the categories a bit further. It's transportation electrification, where there is a lot of decarbonization potential and reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Building electrification and energy efficiency, which does include Building Efficiency Accelerator that Allison spoke of earlier. And then we have the VPP, virtual power plants, storage and grid resilience. That last one there, DERMS, is Distributed Energy Resource Management System. So this is basically the backbone, the technological backbone that allows us to create and control these virtual power plants. And there are community grants plus workforce. We have a number of those. We talked about the Resilience Hub grant earlier tonight, I think, in the chair's report. And then affordable clean power, which is a very important one, especially right now. I think that is very top of mind for a lot of our customers as we continue to see rates rise. So ongoing care and fair outreach, and then other programs that help to decrease the cost to our customers like DAC GT. But of course, that we want to balance that cost and affordability with our goal of being 100% carbon free by 2030. And then also affordable clean power includes the expansion of our service to new territories that haven't had the option to choose anything other than PG&E. So we're excited to start service to Stockton and Lathrop. In fact, those notifications begin going out in February, and then we'll begin service. Is that correct? February, March? Yes, we'll start service in April. So there's a total of 4 notifications that go out. And then, of course, hopefully all have heard that we received our certification letter in December from the CPUC with noting that our earliest start of service for unincorporated San Joaquin County is January 2026. So we'll continue to expand our service territory with the goal of, you know, meeting that 2030 carbon-free goal and continuing to provide a discount to PG&E for our standard service. Okay, can we go one more slide? I feel like I'm maybe taking a little too long here, sorry. This is a high-level summary view of some of the equity metrics, but in the first 5 years, what I'm calling affordability and resilience. We spent about 26.5 million. And sort of these customer engagement touch points, it's not necessarily one single unique customer, but sort of how many interactions that we had, about 218,000. And you can see in this fiscal year where our total dollars invested is 29.6 million, so higher, and nearly the same number of customer engagement touch points over just a single 12-month period. Can we go to the next one? And then the next two slides go more into the detail of how those numbers break down or those touch points break down. So, and I lumped these by completed efforts, meaning we sort of did this, we don't necessarily plan to go back and do it again, or for example, like under the California Arrearage Payment Program, that was a debt relief program that was funded by the state specific to debt accrued during the COVID pandemic. So hopefully, I really hope we never go back to that one again. But then we have some ongoing efforts, so things like DAC GT or what we call Ava Solar Discount, which is a wonderful program that provides not only a discount on the bill, but sort of the allocated, 100% solar power to those customers. And we develop projects within that community or close within a certain radius to serve those customers. So we did just get approval in November to expand our Ava Solar Discount program because we hadn't received a capacity allocation for Tracy, Newark, and Pleasanton, nor Stockton and Lathrop, but now we have received that. So we'll be able to expand the number of customers that we're serving, which also means more projects built within our service territory. So you could read the rest of those. You can do one more slide, Adrienne. And then these are for upcoming efforts. Wanted to call out the equity metrics associated with things like Ava Bike Electric, where 40% of the $10 million fund for Ava Bike Electric is allocated to Karen Farah. So it's not, it is sort of its own protected fund. So even if, as we anticipate, there will be more demand than we can fulfill from the sort of market rate or standard customer interest in this, we have this protected funding and with increased incentive levels as well for Karen Farah customers. Healthy Communities is our direct install program of induction ranges. We just received a presentation on this today that JP was part of, and I think we're up to nearly like 80 applications, and anyhow, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, so I won't say this. Maybe like 13 installs are complete, so that one is moving forward. Under resilience, we'll have the solar and storage incentives, which do have higher incentives for resilience hubs and for care customers. And then the DC fast charging network, which is called Ava Charge, we are intentionally siting this near high density multifamily housing to it's really a hypothesis at this point. And the reason it's a hypothesis is because those areas are not where you see private companies investing in this kind of infrastructure, which is why it is perfect place for Ava to be. And so we believe that by siting the fast chargers in these locations, you remove barriers for renters, for multifamily residents to be part of the EV adoption and transition. And so that we will be moving into sort of a soft launch of our first site very, very soon, within days. And so if we could go maybe just go to the next slide, and I'll just pause here and say the next, I don't know, 10 to 20 slides are a couple call-outs in highlighted efforts from this period. But I'm going to pause here and ask the chair if this feels adequate and you would like to move to discussion, or should I continue?
Thank you very much for this so far. And I think if there's more information, that's great. But if there's questions about the past, is it making sense? What I'm presenting, is it valuable? Yes. Right. If you can continue, that'd be great.
Okay. Okay, Adrian, could you go to the next slide, please? So I guess, okay, we'll have about 7 different highlights that we'll go through. Next slide, please. We're going to, so as I mentioned before, the local development business plan, you know, it's really, I feel that we have come to talk about local development to be fairly focused in on these like customer programs. But the plan really spoke more broadly about like local procurement, local projects, as well as other things outside of the local development team's purview. So I think one of our highlighted early achievements was the Scott Haggerty Wind Energy Center, which was a repowering project. So it basically replaced 569 old turbines with 23 modern turbines, and it was 57 megawatts of local power, and it used 115,000 hours of union labor and represent about 20 million investment in Alameda County. We do have additional programs coming up, or I'm sorry, projects coming up, like Aramis Solar and Storage is the one I mentioned, has had a lot of discussion around zoning and permitting issues in Livermore, but we are contracted with that one for RA, I believe, and then resource adequacy. Cola Storage, this is a storage only project. It's right outside Tracy, and that'll be 125 megawatts. And then all of the, I've been calling them the DAC GT, the Disadvantaged Community Green Tariff. That's kind of the wonky public policy term that we use, but we market it as Ava Solar Discount. We have 7 megawatts of projects in San Leandro, Oakland, Hayward, and Tracy. And we will be expanding that program. So I believe we are in the process of drafting and will issue an RFO soon for additional projects in our service territory. And then also I wanted to mention sort of the financing that is, you know, none of these projects can get done without important financing. And EBCE, now AVA, was really instrumental in bringing the concept of a prepaid bond to the CCA world. And we've done, there's now been about $3 billion in prepays, but what that does is leverage our position as a local government. This is something that investor-owned utilities can't do, and it provides a discount ultimately to our customers through this financing mechanism. So we're able to deliver renewable energy at lower rates to our customers. This helps us do it. Okay, could we go to the next slide, please? So this is some of our early resilience efforts. I appreciate the comments made about the Southern California wildfires, and it really is quite devastating. And it is important to have the resiliency. I mean, the issues with the wildfire goes beyond, I think, what we can solve just with local solar and storage, but it is certainly one step and one part of moving away from these like catastrophic events. So what we've been working on was early on, we did Resilient Home, which was really a direct response to the 2019 Public Safety Power Shutoff, the PSPS events, which were the first of their kind. And that was basically the utilities proactively shutting off the power at times when, you know, we've been in a drought, things are very dry, and then it becomes very windy. So those are the conditions under which wildfires are more likely to happen. But when that happens, it means people who either choose to stay in their homes and maybe not evacuate, or who have critical electrical loads that are supporting medical equipment, or even, you know, they just need their refrigerator to keep running because they've invested in the food that's there and they can't afford to have it spoil. So we launched this program for solar and storage, and we aim to have at least 20% of the projects sited in disadvantaged community or low-income communities, or be with medical baseline customers. Those are the customers that require, or I'm sorry, have a medical device that requires electricity. Or we were also looking for customers who were basically receiving financial assistance. So our goal was 20% of the projects. We ended up with 22% of the portfolio falling into one of those categories. We had about just under 1,200 customers participating. So essentially, we provided an incentive, which helped to reduce the cost of solar plus storage, but then it also gave us the rights to do some control of that battery. So it was the start of our virtual power plant. We could go to the next slide because then we have some more. So Resilient Homes is now, it's still active in the sense that we still have rights to some control of those batteries, but we are no longer accepting new customers and offering incentives. That, though, has helped to inform and will continue to inform the design of our upcoming solar and storage program. So the other effort that has been underway for a very long time is our critical municipal facilities. So this started all the way back in 2019 when we worked with our city partners and basically said, you know, tell us the sites that you have within your community that would benefit from, you know, either just solar or solar and storage. And so we got a whole range of locations from fire stations. Sometimes it's like the corporate yard, or it's a senior center or community center. And so initially we had looked to have 10 megawatts of solar and 25 megawatt hours of storage. We are still pushing forward on this project. You know, it started as about 60 individual projects that were brought together for the economies of scale that we could offer by but like aggregating all these projects. We're now down to around 30 projects because some projects, you know, they needed structural work or they needed a whole new roof, and like the city just wasn't prepared to make that kind of investment in the same time frame as this portfolio is moving forward. But, you know, it's if we can get this across the finish line, it will be a major achievement and really bring a lot of local resiliency to our communities. So that one is still very much in progress, very active. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight is these portable batteries. So first we gave away 50 free portable batteries to medical baseline customers. So again, these are customers that have some sort of medical device at home that they need electricity. They can't go without it. So we gave away 50 of them for free. And then we did about, well, was it 150? I feel like that number might have gone up, but about 150 rebates for medical baseline customers, so that they could then, it was $1,000, they could go out and procure these portable batteries that, you know, they're not attached to like rooftop solar, but it still provided this kind of resiliency and the electricity that they need at times of an outage, whether that's a PSPS or because of downed power lines. Okay, next slide, please. The other thing we wanted to highlight is something called the Oakland Clean Energy Initiative. Some of you may remember this. Unfortunately, it's not something that ever got fully across the finish line, but I think it really helped to serve about the way that CCAs like AVA can really make things happen in a way that perhaps the investor-owned utilities were not able or willing to do. So in this case, there are still 2 peaker plants, which are essentially jet turbines, and they're powered with jet fuel, and they turn on just a couple times a year at the height of our demand. But they're down in Jack London Square, and so they're within a very densely populated area. They do increase the air pollution in that area, and so we wanted to replace those with batteries. So that would still only, you know, it's not a resiliency, it's basically making sure that there is enough power at the time when the peak at, you know, over a year. We would still have enough power to meet that peak on that year, but now we'd be doing it with battery rather than with jet-fueled, you know, peaker plants. So we got our side of the deal in place, and we were very excited about it. Unfortunately, PG&E was not able to reach a final agreement on their side of the deal, and so that fell through. But I am hopeful that in the future we can find other instances where we can leverage our position in the market and with our customers to bring these kind of solutions to our member communities. Okay, next slide, please. This one is about municipal fleet electrification program. So this has sort of gone through several different stages or phases over time. So it started with no-cost technical assistance, basically helping our member jurisdictions look at what they needed to do to transition their municipal vehicle fleets to EVs. And in some cases that was charging, in some cases that was like vehicle purchases. But just developed 10-year plans for 13 jurisdictions. We also offered this technical assistance to some private sector customers as well. And then for our city fleets, we were able to help them get some additional grant funding. So in all, it was $18.8 million that we were able to leverage in addition to the funding that we brought forward for the technical assistance, sort of queued up our cities to be ready to take advantage of those additional dollars because they had a plan in hand that could meet the requirements of the grant funding. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, moving into 2020 was not the work that we thought we would be doing, nor is it what, you know, people want to do, but we were in a wonderful position to be able to support our local communities at this time of crisis as we all entered into sheltering in place and dealing with the pandemic. So we were able to bring to our community $2.2 million in grants. Some of it went directly to our cities or the county because they had set up their own relief funds and were, you know, funding local organizations. So some of that money went just to our cities and said, okay, you know your communities, get this money out there. We got $650,000 to local community-based organizations. So that was anything from like, you know, a church that was providing shelter to the unhoused at a time when we just didn't know what it, you know, where the risks were, or it could have been other like food security services. We got $245,000 to local medical and healthcare orgs. A lot of that just went towards things like getting masks. You might recall that, like, remember when we couldn't find N95 masks? Those were hard to come by. And then we did $175,000 to local food banks and for food aid to support those that were struggling during the pandemic to have food security. We can go to our next slide, please. This is the Building Efficiency Accelerator. We just talked about it at length, so I'm going to go to the next slide, which is some highlights of our municipal support. Waiting for that one to change. Thank you, Adrian. Okay, so I'm not going to read through all these, but we did do a lot of technical assistance for our municipal partners that are, you know, the JPA members. Early on, that was for reach codes that supported electrification and energy efficiency, also around EV permitting, and then fleet assistance, as well as charging. We did the grants, which again partly went through, the COVID grants went through the cities. We also do on a regular basis these local CBO. Internally, we call them our hyper local sponsorships, but it's up to $2,500. And we ended up doing about $289,000 in 140 community grants across 13 jurisdictions. We brought in a lot of money for EV charging through Cal EVIP, and then as well as CEC grants and some federal money. And then on, you know, I think sometimes it gets maybe lost in all the details, but we did deliver $72 million in savings with our Bright Choice discount. So that feels quite significant. And we have supported and will continue to support the transition of our member agencies to Renewable 100. So 8 cities, well, I think that 8 includes Fremont, which is coming up in August of this year for the residential customers, but they moved their customers rather than individual opt-out. They did a community-wide opt-up to Renewable 100. And we saw very minimal opt-out. And so that was a great way to help support their local climate action plans. Okay, and then I think we're on to the last highlight, which is our key takeaways. So what we found is that, a lot is possible, and we've built out our staff. We have increased operational maturity. So, we feel like we're sort of poised for this next phase to do additional implementation and execution. I'm sorry, Adrian, I'm on the next slide now. It might just be delayed. Okay, thank you. That, the LDBP and even, the plans that came out of that were very aspirational and not always feasible, but we feel like we walked away with some lessons learned. So we intend to take those lessons learned and apply them as we plan and go forward. And right now we're really seeing the need for prioritization, where the local development business plan was quite comprehensive and really broad reaching. We find that we need to focus and prioritize on our core programmatic initiatives so that we can successfully deliver these benefits to our customers. And then what we have in the next section, which if it's okay, I'm going to suggest, given the time, like maybe I don't go into the deep dive into the early action focus areas, but in the next section, each of those chevrons that you saw in an early slide, the information that was in there, but maybe not in these highlights, is bulleted out with some additional information about what we did as part of, say, like a demand response program or a pilot on managed charging, those types of things. So I think if it is okay with everyone, I will pause there because the rest of the deck really just kind of does the deeper dive.
Thank you very much, Annie, for this overview of the past accomplishments. It's very detailed, a lot of good information. The board really appreciated it. Your presentation last month when you went over that deep dive. And there was some dialogue that I try to capture in my CAC report about items you mentioned there. I think one member mentioned the AMP, the REACH codes, ongoing efforts to publicize AVA's efforts over the years, and then really looking at the next iteration of the local development business plan. And we have one ad hoc committee here, but I know that you'll also be working through that next version. I think you have some slides there that also speak to that in the future. Is that what was going to be next in the presentation, or that's of the information? Just trying to remember.
No, I don't think that there were additional slides on what's coming up. I think that was only covered in what was presented to the board as that fiscal year 24-25. Let's see, it's slide 12. I think that was where, because this was intended to be sort of the review of the local development business plan, there was not at this point in time anything presented beyond what we're focused on in this next sort of 12-month period.
Okay, thank you. I'll take questions or clarifying questions from our members. I'll start off with Member Harper, his virtual hands raised.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Annie, for this presentation. When I was building support in Stockton for CCA, the opportunity for building local programs that are tailored to community needs was, like, by and large the most important selling point. So I remember communicating to people in real time what East Bay Community Energy was doing during COVID, and the community investment grants, and that's what was turning heads and getting people to go, holy cow, like there's something else. So I just want to highlight that, yeah, this is really exciting work. On the last point around focusing in on and prioritizing core initiatives, I want to highlight, I totally get that sentiment, can't do everything, but I also do want to encourage that there's like good policy around being flexible and adaptable to changing energy needs, especially as there's like a significant set of new members coming into the agency. So would love to think about ways on making sure there's good community engagement and planning for local programs. And yeah, thinking about how and why a specific program gets prioritized. Who did staff talk to in the community? You know, do they work with a community advisory member? What part of the service territory is likely going to benefit the most, et cetera. So those are some of the things that are on my mind. I have a lot of questions, but I'm gonna save them for another time, I think, because it's almost 8:30. I want to give other people a chance to speak. But thank you so much again for the presentation.
Thank you very much. Other members? Yes, Member Bakus.
I have a question about the Oakland Clean Energy Initiative. What happened with PG&E that's kind of making it not move forward?
So that happened years ago, so it's not really, I have to pull back in my brain on that one, but essentially there was a, JP, maybe you know better than me. I'm sorry that I can't be more specific. This was not a deal that I was directly involved in. It was very much on the procurement side, and if Howard were here, he could answer your question better, but all I know is that essentially there was sort of an agreement or a revenue stream, like a product that was going to be contributed by this project, a product meaning like a power or energy product that would replace what PG&E was purchasing from the peaker plants, and they could not come to an agreement on that negotiation.
Yeah, I think that's right, Annie. My recollection is that there was some distribution reliability planning that kind of precluded PG&E from actually being able to retire the peaker plant. So something to that effect.
Do we know, is PG&E dropped it completely, or are they still looking at it, do you think?
I don't know if they're still looking at it.
It's just because it's an air pollution source, it seems like that's kind of an important thing. So just seems like it shouldn't be dropped completely. I don't know if Ava could bring it back again or talk to PG&E. I don't know if that's in our purview, but it seems like something that's an air pollution issue in a neighborhood. It's kind of important. I also just want to say that this is really good information. I really appreciate it. And we had a discussion a few meetings ago about kind of having an annual report. And I think this is the kind of information that would be great, you know, highlighting our successes. And it's good history for me as a new member. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. That was great. Really, really appreciate it. It's fantastic news. Get all the bad news and then get this great stuff. Thank you very much. One of the things that always sticks in my craw is that all of the procurement, we were hoping that more of it would be local. And I'm wondering, you know, going back into the recommendations not pursued, one of them was to improve and clarify zoning and use rules for larger systems on county land. And, you know, it occurs to me that perhaps putting two and two together, that the zoning and county rules is what's preventing us from using some of the Alameda County, Contra Costa County, and so on, you know, in the East Bay land in that regard. Hopefully, you know, there's also, of course, the considerations for the ecology of the area. But is it possible that, you know, maybe that is a good policy, you know, to a good
So use of our time? Sorry. Yeah. I mean, again, this is sort of a power procurement arena, so outside of my direct purview, but my sense is that what the greatest barrier to us developing more of these projects, or, you know, sourcing from projects that are within our service territory, is cost. And then I'd say the second challenge is diversification. So imagine if this was not happening in LA, but was happening here, and all of our projects were located here. So you do want to have some geographic diversity, but I think the number one barrier to local development is the cost, because we live in the Bay Area. I think as we begin to serve more of San Joaquin County, we will see greater opportunity for that. But in terms of local procurement and local project development, I think the best opportunity for us, and where I would recommend to our public policy team where we would spend time, would be to expand that disadvantaged green tariff or the AVA solar discount, which is local, somewhat smaller projects sourced locally, and then that benefit of both the power and a discount is applied directly to those communities in which it's cited.
Thank you very much. I'm going to put a plug in for Grid Alternatives, which is an organization in Oakland. They've been around for a long, long time. They give great education on solar and other projects related to that.
Other comments? Member Levy?
Yes, this was a very comprehensive report, Annie, and I enjoyed your report. I wanted to ask workforce, local workforce development. Can you go over some of the things that we've done in the workforce development area? I know we have PLAs, and we've had about 36,000 union jobs, but can you just kind of highlight that area, please? And I think it's very important that folks in the disadvantaged areas have opportunity for family sustaining jobs. So if you could just please, highlight some of those again.
Sure. So there is more details if you have the printed presentation in front of you on slide 38, and it, depending on how it printed, it might be very small. So, but I will focus on some of these. So what have we done around workforce development? So we did do some, initial community innovation grants early on in, the tenure of Ava Community Energy. One of those was to Rising Sun Center for Opportunity, and we partnered with them on a number of different projects, some of which were more around demand response. It was Rising Sun and a company called Ohm Connect. We also did some grants or other funding to Peralta College and to Cypress Mandela, another workforce development org. But I'd say the thing that maybe is the best to highlight is the Workforce and Environmental Justice Project Selection Criteria, which was a effort between a large stakeholder group made up of 40 different organizations and Ava staff and board members. At the time, it was John Bowders from Emeryville, I think, really led it from the board side, and then our staff. And this happened at the end of 2023, and ultimately in early 2024, the board adopted a resolution that had specific specifications for specific criteria in our contracting. And so the priority areas were workforce and local workforce development, innovation, location, environmental stewardship, and benefits accruing to equity priority communities. And so a specific objective, I have a little quote here on the slide, was that Ava evaluates proposed energy offtake agreements by conducting a thorough analysis of economic value, viability of projects to meet their stated online dates, project fit into Ava's integrated resource plan, and roll the project in supporting Ava's 100% clean energy by 2030, and that AVA is committed to enhancing its workforce and economic priorities by incorporating energy workforce and environmental justice project selection criteria into the overall evaluation of energy offtake agreements. So that is specifically looking at, the development of these larger power generation. But I think we are also looking to do workforce development for things like that are needed for the electrification transition. So, BACMD, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, has a mandate currently in place and much under discussion for, I believe it's 2027. No new natural gas water heaters will be sold within the BACMD area. So that's more comprehensive than just the AVA service territory because it's all the Bay Area. But okay, that's great. That means there's going to be more heat pumps, but who knows how to install those heat pumps? So we need to build up that workforce so that these kind of mandates don't just fail, that they can, in fact, we have the workforce there to support this transition to electrification.
Thank you.
Other comments? Public comment?
So are there actual numbers of jobs and workforce people trained, like hardcore numbers?
I do not have hardcore numbers at this point, no.
I think it would be good for Ava to be able to say that, to say how many.
Yeah, JP, can you speak to the 2 grants that I think were just put in place or in the process with Rising Sun and Agape?
Yep. Yeah. So we, in the grants that we provided, we got annual kind of final reports. So we have those posted on the Community Innovation Grant page from 2019. That's with Rising Sun. I think that was about 80 youth who were trained in clean, what was it? Green home tours, green home upgrades, something to that effect. And then we have 2 additional workforce development grants that are new, and those have yet to kick off, but they will have similar kind of annual reports and final reports. So we'll be able to refer to those numbers as well. I had one other.
Mandela Parkway.
Cypress Mandela.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we that was not a grant, so we didn't get an annual report on the funding, or it wasn't a community innovation grant, so we didn't get an annual report on it. But so yeah, we have annual reporting that we can provide on some of them, but not every dollar.
It's a real success, so it's a good thing, I think, to mention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we take public comment on this? Okay, yes. Public comment? Yes. Yes, you go. Or anybody else in the room?
I'm tired like everybody else. Yeah, first and foremost, I want to say I really appreciate all the programs that you all have been working on to make real in the community. I do think that there's still, a long road to go. I want to uplift that within the local development business plan, there is a section also on community engagement, because the actual business plan itself came from a lot of advocacy from various stakeholders in the community. And it was really a vision, and I want to just highlight again the value of community innovation, because that's where the idea of this came from. And advocacy to the Board of Supervisors, and the Board of Supervisors seeing value in creating local jobs and local assets and building resiliency. And so they were able to put forth, I think it was like $500,000 to do this study. And a lot of the community was involved in actually, getting to be part of the process, and the hiring of a group of consultants that put it together was very exciting. And then there was a huge day where a lot of the consultants shared the findings and the breadth of the local development business plan. So I really do want to see a lot more of those programs, but one thing for us at the local Clean Energy Alliance that I've said many times in the past is that we need to meet people where they're at and actualize these benefits, these community benefits for people who are systematically shut out of the clean energy economy. Those are low-income folks, folks of color. I just read an article that was very disturbing about some disabled father and child who did not get out of their home. They could not evacuate. The father was an amputee, the child had cerebral palsy. We're gonna be hearing more of these tragic stories if we don't emphasize enough community organizing. We can learn from groups like Disability Justice Culture Club that actually has allies, able-bodied people who are organized to actually help these folks that sometimes are bedridden or need assistance to get out of their home in a crisis situation, or during the pandemic, be able to bring the things that they need so that they can, shelter in place at home. And a lot of these things are already happening with mutual aid efforts, but they don't have enough resources to do it on the scale that we need to be doing it now. So my time is up. Clean power to the people.
Thank you.
There are no further hands raised.
Thank you very much. And I was looking at one of your pictures, Annie, that had the supervisors there present, and I think Nick was presenting a check for $4.7 million. I think that was a county loan, wasn't it? That we paid back early. And then
That's correct. Yep.
I moved the picture, like, wait, I'm in that picture too. So I was surprised to see myself.
Yeah, there you are.
I forgot I went to that ceremonial check presentation just to pay off that loan a little early. Like, whoa, okay, that's me. So like, cool.
Yeah.
I forgot.
We were proud of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big event, just to be able to pay off that startup loan. But to the point, our speakers did mention that we need to do more. We've done a lot of good work. I think we want to continue doing that good work, and really appreciate all the work that staff has put into us with the board of supervisors, the founders, the community leaders who had the vision to move the organization forward so we can have clean power to the people. So thank you very much, Annie, for the presentation. Look forward to hearing more about the future. And one side point privilege, I just signed up for the Sun Run program that had 12 months for $12. So they had some kind of $2,000 incentive program. So you can get solar and storage for $12 for 12 months. So that was very interesting. Hey,
Wow.
I signed up, yeah.
All
It was
right.
through the end of the year, like, yes, please. So it's a program I qualified for, like, all right, let's go. So that's like a $2,000 incentive, I believe. So if we could do more incentive programs to sign people up, sounds good. So maybe we can do more of that effort. But thank you very much. With that,
Thank you.
I appreciate your time again, and we'll see you soon. With that, we want to jump into the ad hoc committee update. I will have to leave maybe a little bit before 9, but we'll see what kind of updates we have. We have 2 committees, I believe. We have one on energy affordability, another one on the local development business plan, and possibly a third. But can I hear from the chairs if anybody wants to go first?
I guess energy affordability. So we had a meeting on December 27th, and Mickey was there, and Peter Weiner and Davis Harper, and Jim and myself. And we're going to have another meeting at 3 o'clock on February 10th. And so we kind of, we had an hour, and it was a lot of things that went on. And I think, Adrian, you passed out the notes to everybody, so you probably have already seen them. But we came up with a lot of questions about, we discussed the percentage of wildfires in terms of were they caused, what was the cause, were they really the power lines, and how are those funds being used? We talked about cap and trade. We talked about, I don't know if any of this, but bottom line is what we decided to do was Mickey we wanted to understand our energy bills. So Mickey was very nice to ask the AVA staff, and Katie sent out really good information. And then I said I would go through my own energy bill, which I did do. And I think that gave us an idea of like what we're being billed now. And it was very interesting to see when I printed this out that my bill is 12 pages. So, and I think that that'll actually be, I don't want to belabor this, but that'll probably be our starting point, I think, is to, couple of things, like see what are the levers that AVA has, try to figure that out in terms of cost. There were some interesting things about the solar billing plan, so talking more in detail about that. And then the thing I mentioned earlier about the gas, like why is there nothing on here about gas? And then we had a lot of questions about, you know, how is AVA indebted to PG&E? Just, and those were on the list. I don't want to go through them all, but so I think we got a good start in terms of the direction. And I guess my first takeaway from looking at my own bill is energy efficiency is incredibly important. So, which I didn't understand, Mickey, at first when you were saying you should be part of the committee because of affordability. Now I see. So anyway, I think that's just kind of like a kickoff start, but everybody was great. And I think it's going to be a very informative, and we'll put a presentation together once we kind of get a big questions. What are the contexts? I think we'll share that. Anybody want to add anything to Jim, Mickey?
Well, Davis had a really,
Davis, yeah, and yes, I forgot, Davis, I'm sorry, you had great comments.
Davis, did you want to? There you go.
Oh, yeah, I can chime in real quick. We just learning the different line items on the utility bill, getting a sense of understanding, you know, what is volumetric based, what are the fixed fees, what's the, you know, looking at the power charge and difference adjustment fee, just trying to get a sense of the full mix of issues that goes into a utility bill. So I think that, yeah, like what Indira said, is I'm excited to keep looking at potential opportunities or proposals that we might make on even just getting everyone on the same page about, yeah, what our energy bills mean. So.
And I guess to build on what you said, Davis, is that, so like what was really telling to me is that $27.69 on my bill, and I don't know if it's on everybody's bill, but those are just the NBC charges. And so that's $332.28 a year. That seems like a lot. And then the gas, I mean, I have solar, so I get more true up. So my bill this month was like $3, but the estimated, you know, charges at true up are $281.25. So it's kind of interesting, and also interesting to see how much generation charges are in ratio to transmission and distribution. And I think that should be something that we talk about, like how, seems to me building all these plants like Ava's doing is very expensive, but it's we're charged so much less. And I don't know, I mean, but we're paying, anyway, so I think that kind of like, what should the ratio be between the two, like generation, transmission, distribution?
Well, it's a pretty clear line, isn't it? From transmission and distribution from PG&E, that bill states the PG&E charges, right?
Well, in terms of like, if you break that out, it's just like, so on my bill, distribution is $22.79 and transmission was $2.53. So what is that? That's $24, like $25. So, and it just seems like that's a lot compared to Ava's is $7. You know, and I wonder if that's what it's like in other parts of the country, like are the other CCAs, are they seeing the same breakout? I mean, I guess that's the kind of thing we should look at.
Right, exactly. Drilling down and understanding and making it a less, more transparent, you know, as far as where are those costs coming from? And we also talked about decoupling from PG&E anyway.
Yeah.
But that's probably another 5-10 years, who knows? But if we could do that, then, you know, we'd have a lot more control. It always, you know, one of the things we discussed too was microgrids, which would completely remove us or give us the opportunity to remove us from PG&E and give us resilience, so we don't have opportunity for single point failures along these big long transmission lines or hubs or distribution plants. And so yeah, you know, I don't know what, but hopefully that will materialize in the ad hoc, what are the pain points and what
Yeah,
are,
it's like
what
the
is
levers.
causing
Yeah.
the large costs on our bill as far as the transmission and distribution. I mean, I can understand generation and procurement and, of the electricity. But what I don't like also is that we're attached to their rate structure. And so that's another thing is the rate structures are incompetent, if you ask me. They don't follow what the true nature of our changes and our goals, our energy efficiency, or our electrification goals are. You know, you're pigeonholed into either being an EV customer or a solar customer or a electric-only customer. You know, it just doesn't, it doesn't work today. So those are things that hopefully we can dig out.
And feedback of the ad hoc committee, I thought it was very helpful. And I thought it was really helpful, Katie, the information you sent us. And I mean, it really felt like we have an opportunity to do a deep dive. Yeah. So I think, thank you for that opportunity, I think.
Thank you. And you'll have your PhD by the end of it.
PhD in billing.
Some hummus.
Well, thank you. And then to Jim, do you have a report out on your committee?
Yeah. We met last Friday, and it was Ernie, Mickey, myself, BJ couldn't make it, Cynthia couldn't make it. We've invited Rachel, and we've also invited Ann Livia. We're planning to have a meeting halfway between this one and the next one. And I've got to remind everybody to go on the website and say when they're available and set it up. It was our first meeting, so there was lots of discussion and what are we trying to do, where are we going to go, and I sent in a write-up of it. The basic thing is that the roadmap, the original local development business plan was a very good roadmap. We got a great report on it. There was lots of good stuff in it. Some stuff no longer makes sense. We had a pandemic in the middle of it, all that. So it's, you know, how do we update it? The 5 of us on the committee won't have the resources to do it. And so it's, you know, how do we get the community engagement, go back to the community, understand what's changed both politically and technologically, technological developments, you know, the geographic expansion of AVA, and, you know, lots and lots of things have changed, but to do that, I want to go back, start that community engagement, see where we should go from there. So I'm sure we'll be doing lots of discussion on that. You'll hear about it probably every meeting.
Good.
That's great. So bottom line, we need $500,000 for another consultancy to be audacious,
you know,
in our goals.
But we want it to be driven by community engagement so that, you know, what AVA is providing lines up with what people want.
All right, well, no, we'll shift some money from building electrification to this local development business plan.
So.
But I think, Jim, if you push that, that's very important feedback to have the community involved.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to figure out, how to get that happening.
Yeah, it just depends how, Ava staff might be working towards that next iteration or the 2.0, the next 5 years or 10 years, so. And if we-
Who on staff is doing that?
Well, I think Annie has some information she's been working through, but I think it'll be like a proposal through, that'll be brought to the board. I mean, I think it'll be part of the work plan.
Well, you know, I think we loved the presentation and the current or past, LDBP. And instead of being, cautious and, necessarily, you know, just refortifying what we already have, but instead just maybe try to duplicate that effort of 70 or so initiatives that would propel Ava well into the future. And so it's just, you know, are we going to be cautious or are we going to be audacious? So that's what we're here for in the ad hoc, with a community engagement.
Yeah, and I think that if we move towards sort of a proposal that it comes to the board and then we ask.
Well, we'll see we'll come up with things. Eventually, we'll bring something back to the CAC to recommend to the board.
Correct.
And maybe I'll check in with Annie and see what they're working on, and see if we can incorporate it as part.
Maybe you coordinate with Kate too. Yeah, coordinate.
Okay.
The resource. Yes.
I just want to, from just what Jessica was just saying, she was expressing some concerns about, from the fires, people, mobility and that issue. I think that's something that the local development plan, business plan should take into account. I also think we have to be very careful because it sounds like that this original one was developed with the community, with consultants, with a real diverse environmental activist. And so I think it wouldn't be bad, like when you said ask for $500,000. I mean, I don't actually mean that, but in terms of the amount of money, but I do think it's really important to build on what the community has already put together or re-engage the community similarly to how it was. Because there are new players, we have new needs. But I think for us to just pull it off and come up with some recommendations is, I think, a really bad idea.
Well, we've been talking.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. I'm sorry to.
No, I like the idea.
But I don't,
Yeah.
so maybe could the recommendation, or since I'm not on it, could we suggest that we put together a group that's similar? Maybe that would be one of the outcomes, which is maybe what you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
Like reconstituting that kind of a mix where you, and maybe get some new players like disability, you know, union workers, you know, people that have been left out or were, I don't know who was left out or wasn't, but we've learned from that, so apply that. So I guess I would say, who are the new people we would add to that existing group?
You know, just to add to what Jessica was saying, I also had, or know of, the principal of my kid's school, the school that you used to go to. She lost her niece and her, I think her uncle, similarly in the Paradise Fires, and he was disabled, or she was disabled, and he went back to get her. But it was similar. It's just that all of a sudden, when it happens that quickly, everybody runs, and nobody's keeping track. So it's a very, very important hole that we need to fill.
Yeah, I think I agree. I agree with that. The other thing too is they talk about rebuilding, but rebuilding better. You know, and that's something, I don't know, hopefully we don't ever deal with this again in Northern California, but it's still something to think about in our energy. And I don't know if that's a new area. I don't know how energy is handled in fire areas.
It would be a great thing for the resiliency hubs to be able to at least have that information for their local community, to have a list of people who need to be checked in on. But that's another story.
Well, thank you for that update. I will need to adjourn this meeting shortly. Did you want to take on anything about the Resilient Hub ad hoc, or do you want to just position that till next time?
I'm already on two.
That's okay. I'm
But
just asking the question.
I really do love the And I do want to put it out there. I don't know if I can manage it.
The grant for the resilience hubs was issued. I think it's been signed and they're starting work.
It has been issued and we are confirming the scope with,
Okay.
yeah, selected.
So, and part of that are some workshops on resilience hubs.
That's correct.
And I suppose we can get, interim reports as they'll be preparing
I can almost imagine.
reports on what's going on. If we could invite them to the CAC to, what's up with that
Well, I
project.
think we may want to attend some of those workshops. Yeah, so I
Attend
think
the
that would be
workshop.
We do. I don't know, though, we kind of talked about this, maybe just an ad hoc committee going, because not everybody would be able to attend.
I think you would have to worry so much about the quorum because we're not holding business matter, but you can attend as an individual person.
There should be an exception.
Is you-
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll look into that.
Yeah, I'll
and
be
see if we
attending.
can- What it would look like.
We'll keep track of it and hopefully staff can keep us on notice about when the first time we'll have a
But if
meeting.
decisions have already been made about the resiliency hubs, I don't know if staff would be interested in hearing anything more from the community on them, or even an ad hoc committee on that. This is really to help staff.
I think by going to these workshops, I think will help us. Then we can partner better with staff and then bring the information back to the board. So I think that's where we're at. I think we have the 2 ad hoc committees and then we'll work towards getting more information with the resilient hubs and we'll see what kind of actions come through the Emerald City Collective with the Local Clean Energy Alliance and other community benefit organizations that will shape our dialogue and discussion to present recommendations that the board of directors can carry forward and help shape our role with resilient hubs. So I think we hold on that for now.
Anybody online want to chime in on resiliency hubs? Just thinking.
Thank you. Thank you for checking. Nothing from me.
All right. Any public comment? You want to offer that opportunity before we close? No? Yes?
Just really quick, I want to send a video to you all, so I'll send it to Adrian to share with you all, but it is, in JP, you were there, a resilience workshop that we held during the pandemic almost 5 years ago, where a lot of this is being discussed, including somebody from Disability Justice Culture Club. So I'd like to share that with you. I think it'll be very informative. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. With any other comments, I'd like to adjourn in the memory of those who lost their life in the Southern California fires and prayers and best wishes to those for a resilient and better future.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks. Good night, everybody.
Very cool. Thank you, everybody.